Ja, hallo. Ich bin Stefanie Voss. Mein Thema ist Führung und Selbstführung und mein Vortrag ist auf Englisch. Leadership, that's my topic, and I'm going to tell you a story, a very personal story. It's the story of my circumnavigation. Now, when you see this image, you're probably a little bit surprised because what does a dental mirror have to do with leadership or a circumnavigation? I promise you one thing. Very soon, you will have forgotten everything I am about to tell you. Almost everything. I really hope that this image, this dental mirror, is going to remain in your memory for a very, very long time. And at the end of my talk, you will know why. Why does a young woman sail around the world? Why would anyone want to do that? Now, my fascination came from this gentleman. This is Jürgen Meyer from Munich, a man who dreamt about sailing around the world by himself all his life. And he never gave up his dream. So he started to learn to sail the day that he retired. He learned everything you need to know to become a really good sailor. And then he did it. He sailed once around the world all by himself. When he returned, his trip was a sensation. It received huge media coverage. We're talking the year 1972. And at the time, he was the fastest German to ever sail around the world by himself, and at the grand age of 64 years. Why am I so fascinated by this man? He is my grandfather. When I did my trip, I was a crew member on this boat. This is the schooner Figewind from Bremen, 20 meters long, that's 66 feet. A very robust boat, but not very luxurious. Depending on the leg we were sailing, we had between 10 and 15 people on board. And, well, the living space on a yacht like this, if you want to call it living space, that's somewhere between 30 to maybe 35 square meters. So that's 300 to 350 square feet. So we're talking about a totally isolated microcosm. Our coast-to-coast trips took up to around about 20 days. So that's 20 days, pure sea, no land in sight. Now, I had this dream of a year filled with excitement and adventure and the wide ocean. And I was 25 years old when I started this trip, and I was very, very naive. And it all turned out very differently. I could have never imagined that my bunk would be located alongside the hallway leading to the toilet. The only private space that I had was basically the gangway to the bathroom. Another thing I could have imagined before was, well, I had to share a tiny little cabin with the most annoying person on board. This guy was a know-it-all in any discipline, and we didn't just share the same tiny cabin, but he was also on my watch team. He was around me all the time, sometimes 20 days in a row with no escape. Now, another thing I could have never imagined before was taking cold and salty showers for an entire year. We didn't have warm water on board, neither did we have a shower, so basically a bucket with a rope and you pour seawater over your head. Now, since we were doing this on the quarterdeck, everybody else could see. And, well, this picture looks great, but another thing I never dreamed of was eating fish for every meal because we didn't have a refrigerator, so we couldn't keep any meat, so we caught fish. And we ate fish pretty much every day. Fish, fish, and more fish. Now, another thing I really could have never imagined, and I've chosen the navigation table to show that. I failed miserably in interhuman navigation. I did not get along with my fellow crew members. I was a complete outsider. People were not nasty to me, but I was just not part of the team. This is how I felt. This is the typically foggy English Channel. I was very, very down and very alone, lonely amongst so many people. And I was really angry at myself because I didn't have a clue what to do. You know, this was supposed to be my fantastic sailing year, my year filled with excitement and adventure and fun. And I think I never felt more down and more constrained and more desolate in my entire life than I did after a couple of weeks into my trip. So what could I do? The ship was in dry dock for a few weeks for some repairs, and I took a break and I left. And you're probably thinking, she escaped, and you're right. I escaped. I just couldn't take it any longer. I needed to have a break. I needed to relax. And I needed to have some me time. So what could I do? I had two options. I could buy a plane ticket, go back home to Germany, quit, stop, just, finish it. Or I could return to the boat and continue to sail. I was very proud, and I was too proud to acknowledge my shipwreck. I just couldn't waste this, lifetime opportunity to sail around the world. So I did return to the boat. Once I had returned to the boat, my trip became much easier. In the end, it was almost as wonderful as I had always dreamed. At the time, I didn't really know what had happened or what had changed, but now, more than 10 years later, I've realized what went so wrong in the beginning and, kind of where my intuition led me once I had returned to the boat. I have defined my own 3 principles of successful self-leadership based on this very personal and very significant experience I've made. Now that's Wolfgang. Wolfgang was our captain, and his word is law. You know that when you're on a boat, there's a very clear hierarchy, and every crew member is aware of that. So basically, when a sailor decides to leave port, to cross an ocean, he knows he'll have to cope with the weather out there, no matter what the conditions. This sail was ripped apart in a terrible storm we had in the South Atlantic. Now, it was torn into 4 pieces. But what did Wolfgang do? He never complained, he never grumbled, no. During this whole storm, he would just stand there totally focused, and whenever we had a change in the current or a change in the wind, he would say, okay, how can we turn this to our advantage? And this is what a good sailor does. A good sailor always makes the best out of adverse situations. And a good sailor never wastes energy on complaining or whining about the difficulties. I embrace what is. That's the first rule to really successfully lead yourself. And for a sailor, it means when you leave port and you cross an ocean, you will have to cope with the weather out there, no matter what comes. Now, if you want to freshen up on a boat like Fegewind, you'll need to take a cold and salty shower, and you will need to embrace the fact that there's an audience watching you. If you want to work as an employee in a large organization, you will need to fit in with that hierarchy. Or let's say you want to drive a car in a busy city like, New York, for example. You will need to tolerate heavy traffic. Excuse me. Once I had returned to the boat, I kind of let go of my inner resistance. And letting go of this inner resistance, this really gave me back some of my energy. I had very clearly decided I wanted to see this trip through to port in Germany. And I was soon to be rewarded for that clear decision. What you see there in the background, that rock, that's not just some rock. That is the Cape of Good Hope, the southernmost tip of the African continent. 30 years after my grandfather had been there, I sailed along his exact route, and it was a unique, larger-than-life feeling. I take clear decisions. This, to me, is the second principle of successful self-leadership. And what does that mean? Well, basically, the should-haves and the would-haves and the could-haves no longer belong into your inner thinking when you've taken a clear decision. So basically, a good sailor cannot, leave port just a little bit or maybe cross an ocean. No, a good sailor, he decides what he wants to do, then he communicates it very clearly and he sticks to it. That's essential in sailing. Now think about it. How often do we hesitate? Sometimes we and ah about the tiniest little things. And all we're doing is basically, we're wasting our energy. Good sailors don't do that. One of the reasons I really wanted to do this trip is I wanted to gain good, solid sailing skills. And what does a good sailor do? If you look at somebody who can really sail well, that person is not just gonna, stand at the helm, monitoring instruments, looking ahead. A good sailor will feel the movement of the hull. He will hold the steering wheel and note the pressure that's on the rudder, and then he will look at the waves and he will feel the wind, and he will look up into the sails and see what's going on up there. A good sailor will sense everything that's going on around him, and then he will adjust his actions accordingly. It took me a lot of time to understand what that really means, but once I got it, I really got it, and not just concerning sailing. Amazing things happened. You remember this terrible guy on our boat? Well, he always had the last word in any argument. So basically, I decided to let him have it. I agreed to what he said, and it didn't kill me. We just got along so much better. I am willing to change. This is the third and the most important principle to successfully lead yourself. Talking about change, do you know who you can change? It's very simple. There's a very, very simple rule to that. You can change all the people whose face you're washing every morning. It's yourself, of course. And then, yes, also, well, it's your children when they're still young, but that's it. You cannot change anyone else. However, being capable of changing yourself, that is so powerful. Towards the end of the trip, the very end of the trip, I was really on board and I felt comfortable being out at sea. And it was only then that I was able to appreciate the wonderful environment surrounding me. Have you ever been out in the middle of the ocean at night? No lights, no coastline, nothing, just water and sky. To me, this is the most spiritual place to be. Moments like this, I'll never forget. I embrace what is. I take clear decisions. And I am willing to change and to actively work on myself. These three principles, to me, are essential. I basically use them to check the direction I'm taking. Whenever there's something that kind of troubles my mind, I ask myself, am I resisting something I cannot change and should rather embrace it? Or, number two, sometimes am I toying around with a decision that I really should take? Or, number three, and that happens a lot, am I trying to change someone whose face I have never been washing? This is a great way to sort myself out. And these three principles, of course, they fit into your life on board a yacht, but they fit into many different roles. If you're an employee in a large organization, if you're a colleague, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a mother, if you're a friend, if you're a sister or a spouse, in any role, it's important to embrace what is, to take clear decisions, and to be ready and willing to work on yourself and to change and to alter your behavior. To me, these three principles are essential for leadership. Because only if you can lead your own life will you be regarded as a leader by others. So here's the dental mirror again. Well, it's a mirror. Primarily, a mirror symbolizes reflection and the will to look at yourself. It's not a big and full-length mirror that's giving you this big and shiny picture of yourself. No, it's a small mirror, a tiny little mirror. And that mirror takes the small things very, very seriously. This mirror symbolizes the will to overcome fear and to have the courage to work on yourself. This mirror symbolizes open and honest inner thinking. Take advantage of every opportunity you have for inner thinking. Take advantage of any mirror, be it as small as that one, to have an open and honest look at yourself. Because you, every single one of you are a leader. You're the most important leader in your life. And you're the only person who can truly lead your life. I think you should embrace that role. And you should become the leader on your ship. Thank you.